1.
This is episode number 30 of Dev Branch Blocks and Awesome.
Blocking awesome. Blocking awesome. Blocking awesome. Oh, hey, I'm Say Reed. I make WordPress, teach WordPress, preach WordPress at Say Reed Media and all the things.
And y'all know who it is. It's your boy Jason Cosper, aka TBD, and yeah, back at it again. Tucker really messed with us because he was supposed to be off today, but now he's.
Is that why he wasn't
off.
first? I was so confused.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, why is my name?
He generated the intro video weeks ago when
we planned ahead for this
thought
one.
that he would still be
a rare time.
Yeah. I thought I was going to be the substitute teacher yet again, but Tucker said absolutely not. So it would not be a water cooler show unless the intro, which we've been doing for 10 years now, wasn't a little bit 11. Okay, 11 wasn't a little bit. I actually just got into a discussion about that
on the social networks formerly known as Twitter, about what the oldest podcast is in the WordPress space, and I was like, it's us, and Adam Silver of Kitchen Sink WP was like, no, it's me, and then I was like, no, it's us, but then he found someone else. It's actually some Dustin something who has a podcast called Your Website Engineer since 2010.
Oh yeah,
we are not the oldest.
Oh, I never claimed that we were the oldest.
Yeah, but he now works for Automatic, so
everybody,
we're the most independent.
We have a guest.
Oh, we do.
Hello, audio listeners. It's not just the three of us today.
You wouldn't know it though if you were here. If you weren't.
Cosper, give us a little intro.
Well, I think I'm actually going to let Host give his own intro, but Host, one of my coworkers over at DreamHost, a job that I have that I do not talk very much about because I like to keep my work and personal life separate. But Host is someone who.
I'm happy to advocate. I use DreamPress across the board. This is not a paid thing. I get no affiliate anything. I just use it a lot.
But Host is somebody who I get to work with day in and day out, and I'm excited to kind of introduce him to y'all. He's hanging out in our chat, our Discord. So if chat seems a little extra empty today over on YouTube, that's why, because he's not chiming in occasionally over there. Host, how about you introduce yourself?
I just also want to say that Host is responsible for my social network formerly known as Twitter's profile picture. So if you enjoy that profile picture, you can thank him. Okay. Yes. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah. So, well, thank you very much. This is actually like the first time that I have been on a podcast like in English, because my main language is Spanish. And I traveled all the way from Mexico to Bogota to be here with you guys via StreamYard. I'm very excited.
Wait, you went from Mexico to Bogota to be here
today?
So
all my career is around WordPress water cooler. This is the kind of obsessed I am with you guys.
That's awesome.
Oh, you moved to Bogota so that you could work for DreamHost.
Yeah, so I can.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's cool.
So basically, when Cosper says the world's most influential podcast, we're talking
it is. Dang, we didn't have to say it ourselves.
Yay.
That's awesome.
Well, anyway, I'm actually really excited about today's topic because I think that this is a really gray area. It's kind of it's just a weird space, right? It's always like the transitional spaces. I've been talking a lot about this, like, for example, speaking of like Mexico, I've been talking a lot about border arts and the art that is created and like art installations that take place along the border of like Mexico and California. And Arizona also. Super interesting when you start talking about like that transition and even not looking at any of the like political aspects of it, because that's just a whole ball of worms or ball of wax or a can of worms. But we're in that space, right, where we've been transitioning for a long time, by the way, from classic press. I mean, kind of
Right, classic
to now.
themes.
I mean, literally classic themes, but to now with block themes, and like there are a lot of hybrid themes that are like kind of I make hybrid installations where like the posts are in blocks, but the pages are not. So it's like it's this like this weird time of transition.
See,
It's uncomfortable.
so I am. You remind me about this blog museum, this MOBA museum of block art. What do you think about those pieces that are like this cool showcase of what you can do with blogs? I think it's pretty interesting to see how they are made. I haven't been on the page lately, but it was like a very cool experiment. What do you think about that?
What do I think about it? I mean, I think
Yeah.
it's really cool. Like, because it's, I think that it, what it is to me as someone who does CSS, right? And the whole concept of CSS was that it was universal. And then you would drill down to these specific things and change it only, as lightly as possible in the more specific inner nesting parts of the CSS, right? But I think that the block themes or the blocks, they're basically like their own little worlds. Like they're like their own like super hyper styled, especially the block themes in the museum, right? Like, so it's not like you would necessarily use those blocks or use them on different pages. They are themselves like an entity, right? So yeah, exactly. On the screen is this like amazing like ballerina on a stage, but like, I mean, I think it's really amazing that we can use blocks as a palette, as like an art tool. Like that's pretty cool. But this doesn't necessarily like transfer across to a theme. So
No.
I'm interested to see what your thoughts are about that. I actually have a postcard of that one, which is pretty cool. Courtney sent it to me from WordCamp Europe, the rainbow target. So, I mean, I think those are beautiful, but are they practical? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think that those are necessarily practical, but they can make you learn about accessibility. For example, if you have like this cover block, and I have been recently working on a website that has this transparent header, and a cover block is like the container of all the content, like the header, the body, and the footer. And I made it like pretty easy to have like a gradient to go from black to transparent, and then you have like this main area. Maybe I can share with you like the website in a little bit. But the thing is that it can give you ideas of what to do. I guess you can mess a lot of your work with that if you don't know about accessibility, because you have like a lot of power with blogs nowadays. But as long as you use it just to get creative with things, there are, I guess, not a lot of limits. Yeah.
What you just said about accessibility made me wonder. So some of those just look like images, right? Something you would make on Photoshop or, Procreate or whatever. But in terms of accessibility, a block describes what is there. So in theory, someone could read the code and like, I don't know, visual, like say someone doesn't have sight or, whatever it happens to be, someone could read that code and I don't know what the word was, like understand, I suppose, what is being created by looking at the code in an easier way even than like SVG, which is just like a bunch of numbers. But in theory, you could like be like, oh, I could theoretically map it out. But this is like, you could be like, oh, look, there's vivid reds and there's circles. By reading out this code, you could know that radius 100%, color vivid red. So you could literally from the code get a visual of what is created. And I've never thought about that before. So that's really
this
interesting.
brings
I don't know
me
that that's what you meant, but that is what I thought.
this brings me back to kind of the original way. I mean, when I was learning, I'm going to date myself, but when I was learning how to like build websites in like 1995, 1996, you would
Yeah.
try to figure out how people did stuff. So you just view source and you'd start
I
picking
still
this
do
stuff
that.
apart. Yeah.
I still
This
do that every day.
the Museum of Block Art specifically has a little link that's like, find out how this art was made, and then we'll give you the code for those blocks. So yeah, you can pick it apart, you can import it into your site and start messing with it. And one of the really cool things about this, I think, is that you are doing this with something you already have installed. It's no additional plugins, it's no anything else. And you know, kind of one of the reasons we're here today is we're talking to hosts about how he has been moving people from kind of short code oriented sites over to the block editor, and having something where you can effectively visit a website, go, oh, I like how that looks, crib the code for yourself, copy and paste it into your WordPress install, not install a plugin, not install like, and then have to configure the plugin or anything else, but you can kind of just pick these objects off of the internet that you
If they're
like.
blocks, you mean?
Yes.
If they
right.
are also, you can go pick blocks off the internet, is what you're saying. Not like some random
Right.
site that's not built in blocks.
Sure. But the more
Okay.
we start to
Just
build
clarifying.
with blocks, the more we're going to be able to start just picking these objects like from sites and go like, oh, okay, like I can remix this into a thing that I would like to use. To me, that seems really powerful.
It's like zine culture.
Yeah.
Or like remixes, like early, like, well, and it's still being done obviously extensively, but like just when it began, like, you know, remixing like sounds together and like taking samples from like, you know, this song and mixing it all up.
You know,
I wonder if that involves copyright issues in the future as well.
Sure.
If you don't want to be worried about copyright, then you can transition from art to patterns. So we have this wordpress.org/patterns directory with a lot of useful, you know, pieces of, or I mean, groups of blocks that are pre-designed and work well. I guess it's just as a base start, they are okay to work with. And they are just like literally something that you can copy and paste and are meant to do.
So I have a question. So patterns and blocks, both of them to me are, you know, these are components. These are elements on a page. These are content components. So, you know, and the thing that I kind of struggle with in general, and I have actually been made some comments on some tickets that are open about patterns in the pattern directory, is that it's very disconnected. Like, you know, you might pick one, but then you're like, oh, I want some other, you know, I want a call to action pattern that matches this one. And you can't necessarily go get that. And so there's a lot of like, you're bringing in these different styles, you're bringing in these different settings, you know, something's got this font or something's got, you know, this margin or whatever. And you're mixing that up. So kind of bringing this back. So it's not just about blocks, right? We're talking about block themes. So and as someone who's done a lot of work of this conversion, like, how do you differentiate, like, what's the theme component? Are you just using like straight up the default theme? Are you using, you know, where does the theme part come in versus the pattern or the block?
Okay, so in my case, I mostly use the default WordPress theme. I try to use that 2023 one because it comes with some patterns and because it has like a lot of attention of the users, and it supposedly has like a lot of attention on accessibility issues also. So for me, it's like this base start, and since the site editor already has this ability to include CSS like without using a plugin, and that CSS you can see like also in the backend. Like that for me has been like this game changer. Like instead of relying on external components, as you mentioned, like not only layouts, but also functions that you assemble. I guess like for me that's like the best way to start. And I don't even use like child themes anymore. I try not to. So if I you're muted.
I'm muted, but I was going to say, this is really the fact that you're using the default theme, right, to create whatever, and that also, child themes, which were a huge thing and like the only way to build out and like kind of time preserve, like protect your site against future updates, like for themes that would update and have, maybe code overwrites or whatever, style overwrites. It's really changing that landscape. Like, so you don't even need other themes. So it's not even like themes, it's just theme. So at what point does that theme just become WordPress, and then patterns and blocks, are the styles?
We've had this discussion before. I remember
We're
when
gonna endlessly have this discussion.
right, but I remember specifically when Matt had his missive of he wanted, what was it, 1,000 block themes in the directory by some particular time frame. We were just like, but with Gutenberg, with the block editor, with full site editing, you don't necessarily, we're getting to a point, right? What is a theme? We're getting to a point where we don't necessarily need, like, you have these kind of very cool themes that you can pull off, and they're very like single purpose and everything else. And you're
right,
like,
exactly.
Oh, I want to throw together a site that shows like when I'm performing shows, like say you're a live act or whatever, and where I'll be. Like there's a theme that they have that'll do that. You can, move stuff around on the block editor real quick and easy. But for the most part, like if you're building a site, you don't need 2023, 2024. Eventually we're going to get to this place where it's just going to be theme,
the site editor. It'll just be the site editor, right? And then there'll be the baseline. So I guess you could then add on like presets, sort of, right? So that would be a theme. A theme would be like, it is a JSON file, but at a certain point, everyone's just going to stick all the stuff in the JSON file. Like, it's not like everyone's going to go to everyone else's JSON file and start taking all their components and just sticking them all in there, right? So you've got a giant JSON file that can do anything. And then what, like, it's really it becomes about presets. That's what I kind of keep concluding. Like, it all is, this is like the beginning styles. You want this site to start with, a sans serif font. And like I said, margins on, whatever. But if you can change all of that from the install, and that part, that all of that stuff is totally flexible. I just don't even understand anymore.
Like, have you ever built a content management system that has an entire infrastructure around it, and then at some point a bunch of people build stuff that make money to do stuff with it, and then you end up essentially taking away all the things that you don't actually need anymore, like themes, maybe even like plugins at some point. And then all it ends up becoming is just like font selection and color selection and locations of things that are floating around on the page. That's what happened.
I feel like that's what's happening. It's
you paint yourself into a corner, and then that corner is not perfectly 90 degrees, and now you're like, what do I do? Well, I guess what we do is we just make it so that that people can customize things using these things. But by the way, we still need to have the themes, because the themes are how we make money, and we still need the hosting to have the themes to make the money. And so I don't know. I feel like we painted
Well, but
ourselves
no,
into a
I
corner.
think that it isn't about the themes anymore, and that's why we have the hosting wars.
But we need 1,000 of them, or 10,000,
Well,
or whatever it was he said.
I mean, honestly, that's just 10,000 different JSON files with some different
Well,
style
yeah.
takes. Like you can go to the word we were looking at in our little group message chat. We were looking at the WordPress.com themes that are available.
Mhm.
Because they, that's where all of the block themes are, there's a lot of block themes being developed, and they are so opinionated. They're the most opinionated themes I've ever seen in my life. Like they're the exact opposite of the default theme. And I'm, that's also kind of what they're sort of like the block museum, right? Where these blocks are like, this is not a block for all people. This is a rainbow circle, a rainbow target thing.
Yeah.
Like this is a ballerina dancing on a stage. Like that's not an applicable block to everybody, right? Even though it's just built from a block. So it's really like really turning everything into Legos. And it's like, do you have, what color Legos do you have in your pack of Legos?
And they're all painted on the side. And so you're only looking at it from the side.
Like the first thing that you think when you say the word blocks are just like Legos, like from the start.
Legos.
Yeah.
So and it's like, you can buy a pack, right? Those Lego packs that are like build, Hogwarts, or like build, an X-Wing or something. But you can build that, or you can build something else completely. You could build some sheep and a little farm if you wanted to with the X-Wing pack. You don't like, it's not, you don't have to build that. And so I think that is, you could also build the X-Wing with just generic Legos. You don't have to have the X-Wing pack to build the X-Wing, right? So like, I feel like, and we're not talking about this technically enough probably for Dev Branch, because, I love to talk about things like philosophically, but at a certain point, what I'm trying to say is what is the theme? Again, like what is it? It's not. It's a collection of patterns, perhaps.
Yeah, so that's what I wrote, like this little video to have some little tech like details.
You have a video?
Yeah,
you're showing on the screen right now.
Like a video to share, like in like. I feel like we should roll in a.
My
oh, this is your video.
Yes, it is. Okay, so I'm just like showing you.
I totally know what's going on in my own show. It's cool.
A little way to. I mean, I'm going to rewind the video real quick. Okay.
I really legitimately did not realize it's a video. Folks who are on the podcast, there is a screen share going, and it looks like Jason are just, as they do, just scrolling through something. But apparently it's actually a video. So why don't you tell us what's actually going on here?
Okay, so you can see that in this case, I have like a slider. I hate sliders, but I had to because I wanted to try the performance, and actually it's pretty good. Like nowadays, even if you use like a slider or a regular gallery, like an image gallery, or even this is like a sample gallery with some tabs. These tabs are using this lazy loading script. So even if you have like a ton of tabs, it works like amazingly fast. So I don't have like any other plugins, just this one installed. And this is like a library of block theme. Of block plugins, but I guess it loads like pretty fast.
What's the library called?
That one is the Spectra one. No, Spectra. But in this case, what I wanted to mention is that we have to move from themes to what will be like the best way to showcase our work or the content. Like in this case, it's like almost the same. Those are always like a group. A container with child blocks. And this is the core one. From the sidebar, you can edit like little details, like, add a link and all those kind of stuff. But when you are using a custom plugin, that's when things start to become a little bit weird. Like you still have these parent and child blocks, but then, for example, if you want to have the same kind of function to show like the most, the biggest kind of image, you will have to insert it instead of using it as a background. And those are like the little details that you will have to take like into consideration, like when you use maybe like this tabs block or tabs plugin, what you end doing is like you have this thing that is called when you, I forgot the exact word, but you start having like accessibility issues if you don't take into consideration the height of the container. So for some of these blocks, you will have to learn. I mean, the developers will need to learn how to add these global styles, like to have some way to start making things easier for the people that really cares about accessibility and not just clutter all the options in the sidebar, and or make your own UI, because when you
Everything
update,
sidebar. We're like
yeah,
in
if everything is in the
sidebar
sidebar,
mania.
yeah, that's something
Sidebar
that
palooza. We have a sidebar in our sidebar. Actually, we have tabs in our sidebar, and
then there's an aside.
the list, and then there's the list items, the list thing, which is just like, I mean, I understand how to use it. It's just I don't understand. Like, it's the sidebar thing. It's like even we're not rebuilding. We're rebuilding the UI of the admin, the dashboard, probably to look more like the site editor, full site editor, and all of those components, right?
Yep.
Because we're blending that in. But and it's not about the design or the colors or whatever, but it is about the sidebars, honestly, these panels that are just like endless things with like drop downs and extenders and things. And it just like, instead of the, something like Divi, right, where you're doing all of that stuff on the page, instead you're just doing that like in your sidebars. So a certain degree, it isn't the front, like what we've been always trying to get to of the editing on the screen, right? It's still abstracted from. You can edit on the block, obviously, but you can't do all of what you were demonstrating in your video there. You can't go into all the block styles. You can't go into the list without abstracting from the page.
Right.
So even though we've made it so you're like editing it while you're looking at it, it's really just like we took the customizer and like mashed it into the editor, because it's still there. It's still a sidebar.
Yeah.
It's still multiple
Sure.
sidebars and menus. So like you can just see it better. It's just integrate. Like I don't. How is
This is what
like theme options?
yeah, this is what Say and I both were trying to figure out when this stuff was going on early on, is that like we came from both Divi as well as Beaver Builder, and the Beaver Builder side for me was like, why can't I customize the margin? Why can't I change the global color that's going to be used on everything? And talk about opinionated. A lot of these blocks back, when people were first starting to do blocks, they were all coming up with their own ways of doing things. Like, oh, here's my own color picker, and you can only pick the colors by CMYK. You can't pick the colors by RGB. And you're just like, why? Like, what's going on here? And
the default color picker is still a bunch of clicks to get. Like, it's gotten a little bit better in terms of like,
it's true.
Now if you click the button, it does excuse me, it does open the hex so you can put the hex in, but you're like literally you have to click open the sidebar, you have to click to the styles panel, you have to click into the correct thing, you have to extend it, then you have to open the color. This is a boring thing that I'm saying because this is how many steps it is. Like,
you know why?
Right.
See, that's why we will have these commands from the command palette. So if everything, in case you can find it, you will just have to type and search, and you will jump.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it's so much the getting there that is actually the problem. It is that it is so abstracted. Like it isn't like, I feel like that's what the goal was to create something that was like editing on the page. That was, and like this doesn't feel like it is that to me. And I'm not critiquing this from a should it exist standpoint. I'm just saying,
one of the things
similar.
that we got, I mean, this is great. What we do is get on tangents. What is a podcast, but if not going off on tangents? But one of the things that was interesting when host was showing off his video that I noticed is as he was showing it off, he showed off a gallery of images first, then he showed off a kind of like a slider and then tabs, and he ran Google Lighthouse metrics for each one of these things. And the gallery of images, or I'm sorry, the original large gallery of like full size images loaded up very quickly within like I think the load time for Lighthouse was like 0.5 seconds. He added a slider, which
those images were probably optimized.
No,
Sorry.
no, and those were from the photo directory. That's other place where you can grab without having problems.
Sure.
Oh, just from the WordPress photo directory.
Yes.
So
full width.
I stand corrected.
Yeah, he grabbed those images full width from the directory, but sliders, which again, host has said he's not a fan of. I'm not a fan of. Like we all kind of have our problems with sliders, but the performance of using a slider in something like full site editing and the block editor, the load difference on that in the Google Lighthouse score from 0.5 seconds to 0.7 seconds. So you're just getting like 0.2 seconds of additional load time on this thing because you're using a slideshow of these large, like full width images, because it's lazy loading, because it knows to only load the images like when they're needed. So you're getting
that's core, right? That's not in the theme. That's just now core,
right.
the core WordPress.
Right. And that's the thing that is kind of remarkable to me, as much as I don't like sliders, that we have managed to only add sliders, which for so long with sorry, I'm going to trash them. I always do. Revolution slider again and again. Revolution slider historically would add so much load time to a page because they're loading just this crap, unnecessary JavaScript. They're, building off on top of jQuery, which is already bloated and just nasty and everything else. And
talk about jQuery that way.
We've gone.
I don't want to hear that. jQuery is not by default a problem. It is only in how you deploy it.
Yeah, but see, the problem is
I guess
everybody deploys it very poorly. 95%
I send it on a USB thumb drive. That's how I usually give it to people, is via USB thumb drive. It's much faster. The latency isn't that great, but once you actually have it, it's pretty snappy. But it's just remarkable to me how using this thing again, traditionally using something like Slider Revolution, using whatever other slider stuff you have, this is something that we have traditionally been building using shortcodes. These galleries.
I'm not here to be a shortcode apologist in any way.
Not at all.
I've never thought that was okay, even if I use it sometimes.
Shortcodes, not even once.
I mean, in reality, that's kind of just, essentially a shortcode is just a code injection, So like, it's not, the reason it's quote unquote bad is because it's a code injection into content instead of programmatic code injection. But in theory, all of a website is code injection. Like, right? That's like
shortcodes.
It's like bringing stuff
were just a product of their time.
Yeah. So, now there's just other ways to bring that data in, right? There's other ways to merge that stuff. So it's not like a short code itself, again, was not the problem. Just like jQuery itself was not the problem. It's how that short code was used or overused. It's not like PHP is a problem, but when people took PHP plugins and put them inside of the content, then that's when it was the problem. Anyway, I have a quick question for you, hosts, if I may. On your notes, which you so delightfully prepared for today's show that we just like to obliterate, preparation is not our on brand for us.
No.
But you did mention the transition. And so that's something I definitely wanted to hit on, because again, that's where I started this whole thing, is we're in this transition time. So if you're transitioning people, are you just straight up transitioning them to the default theme and then customizing? What is your approach to this?
Yeah, it depends on the project, but whenever I can use the latest one, like right now, I'm starting to see the GitHub for the 2024 theme. It's already opened. It doesn't have
I'm so
anything,
excited.
but I'm already subscribed. So I just changed to the latest one and use that. Try to use it.
Whoa. So wait, hold please. So let's say you deployed a site last month. It's using 2023. It's a conversion from whatever. When 2024 comes out, are you going to port that site to 2024?
Of course, because that's more money for me. No, I'm just kidding.
Nice.
Well, that's
that.
actually kind of hilarious.
No, I will just stay with that one. But when there was this, I don't know the exact name, but it was like one of the first full editing blogs. It was not even full. Like I included the header and footer, like using reusable blocks, like I don't know, sync blocks. But right now,
sync patterns.
Yeah, sync patterns. Yeah, and we didn't talk about that, but I would really start like, I would love to see what will partially sync patterns will look like. Like those are going to be like amazing, I guess.
I think themes are essentially going to be a default style set and pattern collections.
Yeah.
Honestly, and then very kind of you want to have like strong controls, strong presets, so that if you bring blocks that aren't part of or patterns that aren't part of that you can override the external styles with the styles of your existing site. So like, I don't know, they all say important or something. Just kidding.
And just for the
without doing that's like, that would be good, right? Like that would be, because you don't want to bring in some random pattern from WordPress.org and then it's like completely different than your existing theme, right? So that's really where I've been struggling in terms of patterns and theme. It's because like I built with Frost, but didn't have the patterns I needed. So I went to the the pattern directory. I was like, let's try out the pattern directory, right? Brought some in, and it's like it's like if you add in a template that's got like stock photos from like some random, you're like, now I've got all this crap in here that I have to go and like strip out. So yeah. I don't know how that, like, the theme or the preset styles needs to be strong enough to override those, or to have some sort of function where it can, do I want these block styles to be overridden by the theme or something like that, so that the theme really does take precedence? Because right now the pattern and the block don't really care what your theme says at all.
Right. To go back to that Lego analogy, having these kind of disparate patterns, it's like saying, okay, I've got a bucket full of Lego in front of me. I am going to build Frank Lloyd Wright's Falling Water House, except all of my Legos are from the Castle collection, the Pirate Ship collection, and the Space collection. Exactly. And you don't have any water blocks at all. Yeah, you're working towards this idea that you have in your head, but you're picking all of these parts from stuff that just does not go. Right. That I think that we're in for a really interesting time in kind of and maybe a slightly painful time in theming, as people have patterns that they like, and they're just like, oh, I use this on all of my sites, even if it doesn't fit in this opinionated theme that I picked off of WordPress.com/themes or whatever. Like, oh, but I found this really cool pattern that I like. I'm gonna try to make it work, and then it's you're just jamming it in there until it fits. It's like,
I mean,
hey,
that's essentially what you're doing, right? Like,
I really love
putting
those
it in there and
shoes.
stripping it all down.
Yeah, I really love those shoes, but they're only available in a 12.5, and I'm a 13. And you're just jamming your foot in there, trying to get it.
Like, I will put this shoe on.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it's like. It's what it feels like, because and then you have different preset styles. If you're bringing in, I mean, I was never a fan of template parts ever, like literally ever. I understand them, but people have used them into like a, like, for example, if you're trying to customize the event calendar. I don't know if anyone here has ever tried to customize the event calendar. You're literally, it's parts, inside parts, inside parts, inside parts, inside folders, inside all the different components, plugins folders, which are also different. And some of them are named in different styles because one was created, 10 years ago, and one was created 3 years ago. So like, it is like you open up these files and it's literally like 2 lines. It says, go look at that file. I'm pulling information from that file. And at a certain point, like even the template patterns, like and the template parts, that starts to get confusing when you have all of these different components. So it's like, which part, what's a template part versus a pattern versus a synced pattern versus a block, and where are the styles? What is the theme? Like, this is, to me, there's no clear delineation between any of these parts. And while people who deal with WordPress all the time can look at it and figure it out, or just be like, oh, it's, use this for that. I just got in a conversation 2 days ago with a client about whether something was a page or a post for like 10 minutes. So these people are not going to be like, is this a pattern or a page? Like, it's
and
posts for the user.
Posts and pages are the same.
Well, they aren't the same.
Technically,
they're the same in terms of like how they produce, but they're not the same on the back end and how they are categorized, how the person interacts with them, and you're not gonna. You could have pages come through, into it out of a little dynamic block, where you're pulling it. Sure, you can pull pages, you can pull posts, but the default is that posts act, in a different way than pages. So that's actually kind of the exact same thing that I'm saying, right? Like, posts and pages have always been pretty like, is it a post? Is it a page? What do I know? Right. And now it's like, is it a block? Is it a pattern? Is it a theme? It's like, are they all the same thing? Like, which part's the pattern part?
What is WordPress?
What is WordPress? Like, we're just like deconstructing it, and pretty soon it's just going to be like Matt standing on a mountain, and it's just
43 minutes in, and we finally got to our bong rip moment. What is WordPress?
What is WordPress? What are we even talking about? Is it software? Is it people? Is it a concept?
Yeah,
I don't know.
To kind of go along with the analogy that we were doing here, I was thinking more along the lines of like, when you go to Disneyland and each one of the people in the different lands, they all have different costumes. And it's a very specific costume to the area that they're in. When I go into the patterns directory and look at those patterns, I feel like I'm taking someone from like Autopia and I'm putting them over where Winnie the Pooh is. And it just makes no sense. You're like, why are these two here? These people, like, what's going on here? Why is there like a pirate guy over here next to, like, I don't know, like Small World? Like, it just it doesn't make sense to me. And so
that's a really good analogy. It's totally what it looks like.
Yeah, because you're not allowed to have these people go to different places, but apparently you can just go into the patterns thing and grab something with like a huge font and all this really cool stuff, and then stick it onto a bunch of flowery things with the damn boat. With the damn boat from, one of the older themes. It's just like, I don't understand how this is supposed to work when you don't have those things talking to each other.
I think that the Museum of Block Art is not really different or that much different than the block patterns directory right now. So it's just like a showcase. But the good thing is that these patterns are, at least to me, easier and easier to edit. Like, becoming easier. At least you have like this, your defined set of colors that you don't have to go and look like everywhere. You can just start like modifying, and you have these like external tools or plugins to complement them. So for me, it's not like a big deal. Like I don't really use a lot of patterns. Like I sometimes
You just make them.
duplicate. Yeah, I make them or duplicate. The closest one, or just add some columns. Or like, for example, one of my favorite blocks is the group one, but with the variation that is the row. So you can have these little, logos side by side, and these things that allow you to use like advanced like CSS right now without having to worry about if it's compatible with browsers or not. So
But so this is something I don't actually know, and I should probably know this, but I don't. Does the most recent version of the block editor have a CSS editor like what was in the customizer, where you can actually specify classes and styles, or is it just the CSS class assigner, where you can assign certain classes to blocks?
You have two fields, like the general CSS that overrides like everything, but even in the global styles panel, you can customize each block. So you can override only that block, and it's not like a big file of CSS. So it's getting like pretty.
So it's like
flexible.
The customizer. I was tracking for a while on somewhere in the community, in the track somewhere, the CSS conversation. I think it was in the full site editor channel, and talking about losing that that CSS component, that like in admin CSS component, because you can always create a style file or a JSON file or whatever, right? But like you can't you couldn't for a long time. Yeah, it's the custom CSS, so you can put it in there. All right, well, thanks, Courtney. Since 6.2, I'm definitely updated. But that was that's for developers or CSS folks, right? It's not like the average person developing a site is trying to go in there and add CSS. That's just something we needed in order to have additional control.
Yeah, but you are using like less and less CSS. Like most of the UI, no, not you. I mean,
no, I'm so mad because
someone,
CSS is the coolest. Like CSS does so much cool stuff. And I just don't understand why we're separating ourselves from CSS.
It's the
freaking
application
React and the stupid Facebook.
What I mean is that you can do
software.
that from the site editor. A lot of the things that you used to have a lot of CSS, right now it's like less and less. You don't need that much to have a cool design, I guess.
We just need an accessibility menu in the settings, like you do on an iPhone, where you can then go and do all the cool things that you wanted to be able to do. You wanted to have the little menu that pops up all the time on the screen that you can tap on because your button broke on the phone, or any of those kind of like weird little things. They hide it all in accessibility, which is, like what Courtney's talking about over here. It's like, can the main thing be about accessibility? I mean, yeah, it kind of should.
I think we're trying. Well, I don't want to speak too broadly, but there are a lot of people in the community focusing on making sure that core is accessible. And, the extended part, like all the plugins or additional themes or whatever, like those may or may not have that component. And I have heard, I don't know, I'm not an expert on this, but I have been told that there are still a lot of core accessibility problems. So it's not just that layer of developers and block developers or whoever's building stuff that's causing the accessibility issues. It is the actual core, UI and layout that is doing that.
To do the thing. Yeah.
It's more complicated for us even. Like, I don't know. Somehow it is more complicated to go in there and like hand select all of these options, and I kind of don't like, I liked doing CSS, right? And I know that's not as accessible to everyone who doesn't do development, but I do feel, I don't know, even more abstracted from development as I'm in there just like clicking, a margins tab that is like literally like a scale box, unless I change it to like being specific numbers. Like it is it's like a Fisher-Price control panel, right? Like just the beginning thing
Duplo.
is like, yeah, it's like
Duplo.
It's the Duplo boxes. That's true. Because it's like, just wiggle this and it'll be small, medium, and large. And it's like, what are we like? That is accessible. So I probably shouldn't complain about that, because it is taking that level of design control and giving it to someone who doesn't understand what the difference between PX and EM is for font sizes, right? So like, I get that, but
yeah,
I do feel like it is, I don't know if that matters, honestly.
only
like,
if all the blocks support it.
I think honestly, designers should be more concerned about this than developers, because the under the hood stuff, the functionality, like that's still all really important. Like that part is all still complicated, and there's a lot going on, and there's new languages that are being tossed in there all the time. But the design component is being simplified, sort of like the Canva of websites, right? Like that is what's happening here. So really less developer concern than theme creator and designer concern, because if everyone is able to just, modulate their stuff, which they probably should be able to do. Anyway, that's just my thought. We've gone way overboard.
We have.
I'm so sorry for all of my jabbering, as per usual.
Host produced like a multi-page document, and I think we only scratched about 15% of it.
I tried to go back.
Oh darn, we have to have him on again. Is that
what we didn't talk about Chili Achilles. We didn't talk about Chili Achilles. You like literally made an entire like outline. I think we should put the outline in the show notes so everyone can understand just how far away from Host's vision that we got.
Because then we're setting like a level of expectation, and I don't want to set a level of expectation.
I was thinking more that the level of expectation would be like, you can make these plans, but we will take your plans and we will just pop them out the window.
I'll just make sure that the links aren't clickable.
With love, though.
So you have to actually highlight and copy and paste. That will change the level of expectation. We'll definitely do that.
Sure.
Thank you for all your effort preparing it, though.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming and hanging out with us. We really appreciate it. And for the folks that hung out in the chat, thank you very much as well. If you found that this content was interesting, we do this show, Dev Branch, once a month. It's the first Friday of the month, and that's when we put this type of show out. So if you're wondering, like, wow, they've only done 30 episodes? That's actually a long time.
If it's monthly, it is.
It is monthly.
Right.
Yep. So again, thank you all for coming and hanging out with us. We really appreciate it. Here is our outro. And one of you need to actually say the words. Here we go.
I will. Oh, yeah. Okay, Spotify, YouTube. I guess we're on that Facebook thing. We don't go to Instagram. Anyway, come chat with us in the Discord, because that's kind of just the best. Like, let's chat. Especially since the Slack makes Slack